Over the past 18 years, I have acted as a scientific consultant to the U.S. Air Force on the subject of unidentified flying objects, UFOs. As a consequence of my work on the voluminous Air Force files, and to a greater extent of personal investigation of many puzzling cases and interviews with witnesses of good repute, I have long been aware that the subject of UFOs could not be dismissed as mere nonsense. Dr. J. Allen Hynek. Hello there, friends, and welcome to the Paranatural Podcast. My name is Ben.
Oh, I'm Jake.
And tonight, we're going to take a little bit of a look at the history of ufological study, mostly as performed by our very own government, as well as talk about one of the most important and influential men to ever study UFOs.
That's
How you
the
doing
guy
tonight,
from
Jacob?
Blink 182.
No, not fucking Tom DeLonge.
Yeah, it is.
That fucking weirdo. Did you ever see his Joe Rogan interview?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that guy is off the fucking rails.
I love him so much.
No, tonight
Yes.
we're not talking about Tom DeLonge. We're talking about Project Blue Book and our UFO godfather, Dr. J. Allen Hynek.
Heimlich?
Not Heimlich, Hynek. So it's going to be a little bit of a history thing today.
Jeez.
Hey, it's important history.
Yeah.
It's important history.
All right. Well, that sounds good. To answer your question, I'm phenomenal. How are you?
I'm doing wonderfully. Doing wonderfully.
Your head's looking especially shiny today.
It got a little sun on it. So did my arms. I was out mowing the yard and
You got the old farmer's tan?
yeah, I got the old farmer's tan going. All
What a man.
Sunburnt from the shoulders down.
How's the back of your neck look? Red, I trust?
Yeah, pretty red. I am definitely rednecking it. Right now.
Good. Why don't you have a PBR on your porch and some barbecue?
There you go. Sounds good. But I do this every year. I get this like first sunburn out of the way and then I'm good.
That's what I thought, but Virginia has got a whole different sun to it.
Yeah, well,
My farmer's tan burn, and then I got like 4 more.
I was discounting what happened to me in California last year.
Yeah, California, that's a whole
different sun, buddy. It's a whole different sun. This Midwestern boy was not ready.
Yeah, they're like gotta be 50,000 miles closer to the sun.
I'm pretty sure they're just sitting out in the sun.
You think
They're
did
right
you get burnt from the bottom?
next day. Yeah. Knees down.
Got the old creepy crawly sunburn.
That's because I don't wear shorts ever, and then I decided to let my legs air out on a California beach.
Yeah,
Paranatural PSA. Don't do that.
Yeah.
If you're from the Midwest and you never wear shorts, don't do it on a beach in California.
You need at least SPF 600.
That might do it.
Which is sweatpants.
Right. A suit of armor might be recommended because it's also reflective.
That's why I'm lucky I'm so white. I am reflective.
I thought the same thing. My legs had not had any sort of color on them since I was like a little kid. So I just assumed that they couldn't tan anymore. I would like put on shorts and it was like the beacons were lit. Gondor was calling for aid. And no, I learned real quick that's not the case.
That's why I got such a fury going to a nude beach and tan my little butt cheeks and they'd turn into blisters.
Just blister butt all over the place.
Yeah.
It'd be real hard to sit down for a while after that.
Yeah. Sit in a seat and have a wet ass from blister juice.
Gross. Anyway, all right. Are we ready to talk about Project Blue Book, Jacob?
Oh, I suppose. Let's get Blink 182 underway.
No, not Blink 182. Fuck Tom DeLonge. He's crazy.
How dare you?
He is. I like their music. You know, back when I was in high school and stuff, it was great. But that guy has gone off the fucking rails. Anyway, Project Blue Book. So we really can't talk about Project Blue Book, which was the longest running government study of UFOs, which was in the 50s and 60s. And we can't really talk about that without first at least talking about its precursors, which were Project Sign and Project Grudge. Yeah, we got way cooler names for shit back then. Now we get AIM-SOG. But Project Grudge was fucking, that's a lit name.
Lit, fam.
It's lit, fam. Look, we're hip. Great
More
chest,
reason to listen.
great chest hair be damned.
LOL.
So the United States Air Force began studying UFOs in 1947 after some very public occurrences happened, namely the Kenneth Arnold sighting and the Roswell incident. Okay. And after they started studying it, they decided to organize it. So in 1948, General Nathan Farragut Twining, I'm not sure how you say his name, who was the head of Air Technical Service Command, organized the studies at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio under the name Project Saucer, which was apparently too on the nose because they changed it fairly quickly to Project Sign. Now, the original goal of the project was to collect and evaluate information about UFOs and distribute that information within the government. They were trying to figure out, kind of like what quote-unquote AIM-SOG is doing now, to figure out if it was like a Russian threat. This was the height of the Cold War. So they didn't know what the hell was going on. They just want to make sure it wasn't the Ruskies. The results of Project Sign were officially inconclusive. However, according to Edward J. Ruppelt, who would be the future head of Project Blue Book, Sign's initial estimate of the situation was that the sightings were of physical craft that belonged to neither the U.S. or the Soviet Union and were likely of extraterrestrial origin. That's what Ruppelt said originally. Now, USAF Chief of Staff General Hoyt Vandenberg did not like the explanation that was given by Project Sign, so he dismantled it in 1948 and turned it into Project Grudge. Now, where Sign was actually trying to study UFO reports in order to figure out what was really going on, Project Grudge was much more interested in burying the topic completely. That's what they were set out to do. Pretty much every report that Project Grudge looked at was dismissed as shit like weather balloons or misidentified conventional aircraft or weather phenomenon and shit like that. Grudge did not last very long, and they issued only one formal report, which was in August of 1949. The report said the following. A. There is no evidence that objects reported upon are the result of an advanced scientific foreign development, and therefore they constitute no direct threat to the national security. In view of this, it is recommended that the investigation and study of reports of unidentified flying objects be reduced in scope. B. All evidence and analysis indicate that reports of unidentified flying objects are the result of 1. Misinterpretation of various conventional objects, 2. A mild form of mass hysteria and war nerves, 3. Individuals who fabricate such reports to perpetrate a hoax or to seek publicity, and 4. Psychopathological persons, which was way more of a tongue twister to say than it is to read. Now, Project Grudge was officially ended after that report came out, but it continued in a very small capacity until 1951, which to my understanding was pretty much just some dick answering phone calls and taking reports, and that was pretty much it, and then filing them away, and there they went. Now, by the end of 1951, there was some of the top brass in the Air Force that had become very dissatisfied with the state of UFO investigation because things continued to be reported that they were like, what the fuck is going on here? Two of these top brass people were General Charles P. Cabell and a member of Cabell's staff, General William Garland. Now, Garland specifically had an interest in the topic due to the fact that he himself had personally seen a UFO. So he definitely wanted to get to the bottom of it. So together, they dismantled what was left of Grudge, so they moved that one guy off his desk to go do something else, and replaced it with Project Blue Book in March of 1952. Now, the project didn't only get a new name, but it also got an upgrade with more funding for research and personnel. And they named the aforementioned Captain Edward J. Ruppelt as the project's head due to his reputation for getting projects back on track. Now, Ruppelt came in, he made a lot of changes very immediately to the way things were being done. He streamlined the process of UFO reporting, putting a member of Blue Book at every Air Force base to collect reports and then send them to him directly. He commissioned the Battelle Memorial Institute to create a standardized questionnaire and to computerize the data collected, which in 1954 culminated in Project Blue Book Special Report number 14. Now, Special Report number 14 was released to the public in 1955. And the conclusion of that report is very controversial. So if you look at the data, it seems to indicate that there's like a lot of unknown shit going on. However, the memorial, the Battelle, the Institute, whatever, said themselves that it indicates there's nothing going on. It's really hard to read. It's really like a bunch of statistics and mathematical shit. And I'm too dumb to really understand it, let alone explain it. So we're just going to keep this moving. Ruppelt was also responsible for coining the term unidentified flying object, or UFO. And he implemented its use within the military because what they had been doing in all of their reports was saying flying saucer, flying disc, or whatever, and he didn't really like that. So he insisted on UFO becoming the new nomenclature. The other thing he did was he'd seen through Sign and Grudge how like people being overly biased and factional was actually a detriment to the study. So he was very insistent on people not being overly biased. And in his own book, he admits to firing 3 people like really early in the project because they were too pro UFO or too con UFO. He wanted everything to be as objective as possible. The other thing he did was went through the channels to make sure that he and his team had the authority to interview any member of the military without following any sort of chain of command. So he didn't want the delay of having to go to like a pilot's commanders to get the pilot and, you know, them maybe making him say something that wasn't true or what have you. He wanted direct access to anyone who filed a UFO report. Now, under Ruppelt, Project Blue Book investigated a lot of very famous UFO cases, and some of them we will be covering in future episodes. One of these cases was a combination visual/radar case that took place near the National Airport in Washington, D.C. on July of 1952. It's a really fascinating case with a lot of really cool evidence. Now, the July 1952 Washington, D.C. thing was very publicly acknowledged, and that led the CIA to establish a panel of scientists headed by Dr. H.P. Robertson. The panel was assembled in order to come up with a response to the public's interest in the UFO phenomenon. The panel met on January 14, 1953, and Ruppelt and other members of his team, including J. Allen Hynek, who we'll be talking about shortly, presented the best evidence that they had from all the previous projects and what they'd collected so far in Blue Book. Now, the panel spent 12 hours reviewing 6 years of their best data. And after that, they concluded that everything could be explained if it was studied more thoroughly, and that such studies were a waste of time and money. They didn't think anything was going on, so they're like, nope, we're not wasting any more money on this. We don't think it's necessary. Their recommendation was that the Air Force begin a debunking campaign. And they specifically stated that they should use any available means and suggested using like astronomers, psychologists, celebrities, and they even suggested reaching out to Walt Disney Productions to start pushing anti-UFO propaganda. Yeah. Unfortunately, the Air Force listened, and the Robertson panel's suggestions began having an immediate effect. In February of 1953, the Air Force issued Regulation 200-2, which forbid airbase officers from publicly discussing UFO incidents unless the incident was debunked and explainable, and they ordered everything else to be strictly classified. And in that same month, the newly formed 4602nd Air Intelligence Squadron was assigned to investigate the more important UFO cases, so anything that happened like over military airspace or anything like that. And Blue Book was left with more trivial, less important type cases. Because of this, most UFO investigation began being done in secret. So the 4602nd would do all the research, and Blue Book was just the public face of it. Ruppelt requested reassignment in August of 1953 because he was sick of the Air Force's shit. And when he was reassigned, it ended what most people think of as the golden age of governmental UFO investigation. Now, Blue Book was taken over by Captain Charles Hardin in 1954, and he is described at best as apathetic toward the study of UFOs. So he thought everybody who was studying this was foolish, and he was really quite happy that the 4602nd was there to actually do all the work. He was replaced in 1956 by Captain George T. Gregory, and Gregory took the project in a decidedly anti-UFO direction. He was very much on the let's debunk all of this fucking page. He actively took steps to reduce the number of sightings reported. And so he helped implement new procedures for UFO reporting and new punishments for reporting UFOs. He was a real not into this dude. So under Gregory, UFO investigation pretty much just ground to a fucking halt. In 1958, Lieutenant Colonel Robert J. Friend took over as the head of Project Blue Book. Yeah, what a name. Now, he was actually friendly to the UFO topic, and he tried to reverse the debunking direction of the project, but his efforts were largely unsuccessful due to a lack of funding and assistance. In 1960, there were congressional hearings regarding the topic of UFOs, or in the 60s, sorry. The civilian UFO group, known as NICAP, or the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomenon, had publicly accused Blue Book of covering up UFO evidence and had gained some allies in Congress. So it was much like what we're seeing now with the AIMSOG thing. Blue Book underwent an investigation by Congress and the CIA, and critics said that Blue Book lacked as a scientific study. Now, in order to pacify these critics, the project was given a token boost in funding and in personnel. And Lieutenant Colonel Friend was transferred in 1963 with the opinion that Blue Book was useless and should be disbanded because they weren't giving it enough funding for it to actually do what it was supposed to do. After that, Major Hector Quintanilla took over, and things pretty much just got all the fucking bad after that. During his era as the head of Blue Book, Blue Book gave some of its most controversial explanations for some very compelling cases that, again, we will be talking about in the future. And all this led to Blue Book gaining more critics, with many of them being of the opinion that they were practicing questionable science at best and perpetrating outright cover-ups at worst. In 1966, there were more congressional hearings after a string of sightings occurred in New Hampshire. So again, more very public sightings in New Hampshire, and Congress goes, hey, what are we doing about this shit again? Now, following these hearings, a committee was formed under Edward U. Condon. The Condon Committee was supposed to act as a neutral scientific research body, but it too fell under controversy as some of the committee members accused Edward Condon of bias. In the end, the Condon report stated that there was nothing special about UFOs and that further research was pointless. Project Blue Book's last official day was December 17th, 1969. Their official findings stated that sightings were a result of a mild form of mass hysteria, individuals who fabricate such reports to perpetrate a hoax or seek publicity, psychopathological persons, misidentification of various conventional objects. So, same damn thing as Project Grudge pretty fucking much. All right, we're done with Blue Book, sort of. That's just kind of a broad strokes overview of what Blue Book was. Now we're going to move on to probably the most important person to come out of any of this. And that is Dr. J. Allen Hynek. Yes, Jacob. You got nothing? Okay.
I think we should cover Blank 182, but
I don't think we're not talking about Tom's DeLong, all right? if you want
to very long.
If you want to talk about Tom's DeLong, you can talk about Tom's DeLong.
I will talk about
on your own damn episode.
Tom's very DeLong. Mooey DeLong.
That guy, he's fucking anyway.
A legend.
Musically. We're not talking about him. We're talking about J. Allen Hynek.
He should have changed his name
to Tom's DeLong.
That's right.
Now, throughout the course of Sign, Grudge, and Blue Book, there were a lot of different people. Obviously, like I went through all their heads real quick, and there's like half a dozen of them. There was more who aren't even named that took in between times. As far as I know, there's only one person who was there through all of it, and that is Dr. Hynek. Dr. Hynek was born in Chicago on May 1st, 1910, to Czech immigrant parents. Yeah, we're kind of talking about a long time ago now. He earned his BS from the University of Chicago in 1931 and completed his PhD at Yerkes Observatory in 1935. His
BS?
Yes.
What bullshit is that?
The Bachelor's of Science.
Okay.
In 1936, he joined the Department of Physics and Astronomy at The Ohio State University. And I suppose I can forgive him for that one.
Boo, Buckeyes.
Boo.
Boo.
Boo. We're Michigan boys. We have to hate you.
And half of Ohio hates Ohio State. Boo.
Now, after joining the Ohio State University, he did a whole lot of other science stuff throughout his career, which is, you know, I'm not trying to downplay his achievements, but that's not what we're here for. The reason we are talking about him is that he joined Project Sign in 1948 as a consultant and stayed with it as a consultant from start to finish. Now, his role as a consultant originally was to look at UFO reports and determine whether or not they could be explained by known astronomical objects. What the hell are you making that face for?
Riv is very focused on something. He's like watching something on my wall move, and there's nothing there.
Is your dog witnessing a UFO?
Ghosty. Oh, now she's gonna go sniff it. Never mind, her tail is down. Oh, and she made her grunt. Okay, she's done. Okay, please continue. Sorry.
Hynek was a skeptic at first. His opinion was that UFO reports were made by unreliable witnesses or by people mistaking man-made or natural objects. He thought that the UFO thing was a passing fad and said that, quote, the whole subject is utterly ridiculous. Hynek remained as Project Sign became Project Grudge, although his involvement was greatly reduced due to the fact that the goal of Grudge was less investigation and more brush it under the rug. His involvement increased again under Project Blue Book and Edward J. Ruppelt. Hynek and Ruppelt had a great mutual respect between them. Hynek felt that Ruppelt was taking the project in the right direction, and regarding Hynek, Ruppelt said, quote, Dr. Hynek was one of the most impressive scientists I met while working on the UFO project, and I met a good many. He didn't do two things that some of them did: give you the answer before he knew the question, or immediately begin to expound on his accomplishments in the field of science. End quote. So it sounds like Ruppelt met some real arrogant dickwads in his time with Blue Book.
Yeah, it sounds like he probably should have worked with someone named Tom.
Tom? No. Fuck, Jacob. Now, as mentioned before, Hynek started out as a skeptic, but he didn't stay that way. The first sign of his changing attitude toward the subject of UFOs came in April of 1953. Hynek wrote a report for the Journal of Optical Society of America, which sounds like a thrilling fucking read. And in the report titled Unusual Aerial Phenomena, Hynek wrote, quote, ridicule is not part of the scientific method, and people should not be taught that it is. The steady flow of reports, often made in concert by reliable observers, raises questions of scientific obligation and responsibility. Is there any residue that is worthy of scientific attention? Or if there isn't, does not an obligation exist to say so to the public, not in words of open ridicule, but seriously, to keep faith with the trust the public places in science and scientists? End quote. Now, despite this slight change in attitude, he did serve in 53 on the Robertson panel and was part of them, saying that there's nothing going on here, nothing to study, although I am pretty sure he was kind of a dissenting voice in that decision. But overall, he did later in life publicly, talk about his regretting the fact that the panel made that opinion and that he had helped make the study of UFOs a disreputable field. But after the panel, he continued with Blue Book. He continued looking at reports, and that's it helped him become more and more convinced. And some of the most convincing reports for Dr. Hynek were the ones that came from military and law enforcement personnel, being trained observers and people who are generally good at their job, whatever. It was kind of convincing to him what he heard from these people. So that led him to continue to turn away from his skepticism. And he did it in a manner that author Jerome Clark described as an open secret. So he didn't come out and say that he was less skeptical or more believing or anything like that, but you could kind of tell. And by the 60s, Hynek had actually begun to publicly disagree with Blue Book conclusions. and would do so more and more frequently as time went on. One of the cases that he very publicly dissented on was the 1964 Lonnie Zamora case, which is a fucking great case that I'm doing a whole damn episode on that one. It's an amazing case. But in a 1985 interview, Hynek was asked what had caused his change of opinion. To this, he replied, quote, "Two things, really. One was the completely negative and unyielding attitude of the Air Force. They wouldn't give UFOs the chance of existing, even if they were flying up and down the street in broad daylight. Everything had to have an explanation. I began to resent that, even though I basically felt the same way, because I still thought they weren't going about it in the right way. You can't assume that everything is black no matter what. Secondly, the caliber of the witnesses began to trouble me. Quite a few instances were reported by military pilots, for example, and I knew them to be fairly well trained. So this is when I first began to think that, well, maybe there was something to all this." End quote. Personally, I really appreciate Dr. Hynek's first part of that quote because he's just being a rebel. Like, he's like, "Why did you change your mind?" He's like, "Because the Air Force told me I wasn't allowed to." Like, I think that's fucking awesome. Now, despite Hynek's turn from pure skepticism, he did still play the Air Force's game to some extent. Like in 1966, when over a 2-night period, well over 100 witnesses reported UFO activity over the towns of Dexter and Hillsdale, Michigan. Now, the Hillsdale sighting specifically began with a group of girls who were attending Hillsdale College at the time. They looked out of their second-story dorm room window and saw lights hovering over the Arboretum, which is like a trees and swampy area. Long story short, they reported what they were seeing out of their window, and word spread even despite not having social media in 66. And more than 150 fucking people showed up to the college and saw the lights hovering over this wooded area.
Over
Right?
150 people.
Over 150 people. Now, Hynek investigated the incident and held a press conference during which he spoke a phrase that would become a joke in ufology forevermore. Hynek's explanation for the odd multicolored lights that were seen hovering over a forested area was swamp gas.
Now, I remember that. I always wondered where that came from.
Yeah, this is very close to Jacob and I's, home. Actually, it's less than 25 minutes from where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is where Dr. J. Allen Hynek first spoke the phrase swamp gas.
Yeah, that was like 3 minutes from my apartment.
Now, this is kind of an according to legend story, which I'll tell real quick here. But according to legend, before Hynek gave the press conference, he received a phone call. And during that phone call, whatever was said on the other end vastly disturbed the good doctor. And then he went out and said it was swamp gas. So a lot of people, that legend kind of makes it sound like Hynek didn't want to say that, but I'm not sure if, it's just a legend. So
swamp gas.
Swamp gas. Yep. Thanks, Dr. Hynek.
Yeah. We've all seen colorful swamp gas.
You know what? I live in southern Michigan where wetlands abound.
Mm-hmm.
We have more creeks and rivers and shit just flowing into marshes and lakes and everything else than like anywhere else on the goddamn planet. I swear to God, except the Everglades and Louisiana. And I have never in my life witnessed swamp gas.
Yeah, I've seen fog over it, but not swamp gas.
So, just like I've always wondered, has anybody ever actually seen a weather balloon?
Oh, obviously it looks like lights and stuff in the sky.
Right, looks like a UFO.
Yeah, it also feels like a probing in your ass. Don't get caught in the fog, fellas.
Now, like I said, Hynek stuck with Blue Book till the very end. But after Blue Book was dissolved in 1969, Hynek became more open about his turn from skepticism and actually continued his research into the topic of UFOs. In 1972, he published a book titled The UFO Experience, A Scientific Inquiry. And in that book, he first outlined a system of classification for UFO encounters that is still used today, the Close Encounters Scale. The Close Encounters Scale has been added to over time with varying degrees of acceptance, but Hynek's original scale is six-fold and arranged by proximity. It goes nocturnal lights, which are lights in the night sky. Those were things that, Hynek didn't put a lot of attention to because a light in the sky could be about anything. The second
swamp gas
could be swamp gas. Fucking swamp gas. His second classification was daylight discs, which were UFOs seen in the daytime, generally having discoidal or oval shapes.
Discoidal.
Discoitus. That means disc shaped, not plate sex.
Oh.
His third was radar visual, which are UFO reports that have radar confirmation. These supposedly try to offer harder evidence that the objects are real, although radar propagation can be occasionally discredited due to atmospheric propagation anomalies.
Using big words so I don't understand it. How dare they?
This all comes right out of Dr. Hynek's book, and I've read, not any of his books, but some, passages from them. Yeah, Hynek didn't know how to talk to retards. He uses all the big words and stuff. Dr. Hynek's books are not entry level.
Dr. Really Heimlich's hurting my brain.
If you want entry level, go with Jacques Vallée. He's much more.
Talking chefs now?
No, Jacques Vallée is a. Never mind. Next, we have close encounters of the first kind, which are visual sightings of an unidentified flying object seemingly less than 500 feet or 150 meters away that show an appreciable angular extension and considerable detail. So if it's real close and you can see it real good, that's a close encounter of the first kind. Then we have close encounters of the second kind.
Oh, I thought third was next.
Close encounters of the second kind are classified as a UFO event in which a physical effect is alleged. This can be interference in the functioning of a vehicle or electronic device, animals reacting, a physiological effect such as paralysis or heat and discomfort in the witness, or some physical trace like impressions in the ground, scorched or otherwise affected vegetation, or a chemical trace. So if it leaves some sort of physical anything behind, that is a close encounter of the second kind. I did not mean that to rhyme, but it did. I'm rapping over.
It goes by Benny Ben Fresh.
I'm rapping over Hynek's words. Dr. Hynek, give me a backbeat. You were like, oh, he's dead. Anyway.
So it's more like that.
Yep, that'd be the one. That was a good bit. Next up, we have close encounters of the third kind, because Hynek knew how to count.
Attaboy.
Close encounters of the third kind are UFO encounters in which an animated entity is present. These include humanoids, robots, and humans who seem to be occupants or pilots of a UFO.
What about the reptilians?
Those count. You can have reptilians. Okay. Reptilians are humanoids.
Oh, yeah.
The grays, they count. Anything moving around, like any, animated entity. So, now that was Hynek's scale.
What about the fourth kind that takes place in Juneau, Alaska, according to the movie?
That's actually one of the more accepted extensions, which were added by Ted
Bundy,
Bloker or Blocker. I don't know how he says
not
his name,
not Bundy.
but he kind of like has subcategories that he added that a lot of people kind of attest to. But we're not talking about him right now. We're talking about Dr. Hynek.
Okay, continue with the Heimlich.
And just for the sake of saying it, the title of the 1977 movie, directed by Steven Spielberg, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it was inspired by Dr. J. Allen Hynek's scale, and he made a cameo appearance in the movie.
We got
So,
a movie star in our midst.
yeah, you can see him. He's just standing there smoking his pipe.
Yeah.
Like, he is the most scientific looking science guy you've ever seen in your life. Like,
yeah, see, I picture Bill Nye.
He's like got the gray haired look, and the little goatee and the glasses, and he wears the tweed sport coats and he smokes a pipe.
Oh man.
Like, he is like the OG. He's the goat.
That's some more nowadays kind of talking.
Yeah, he is the goat.
Listen
Dr.
to us so you can email us and tell me what Ben means.
I stay hip.
Yo.
Word. It's groovy, baby.
Tubular.
It's radical.
Psychedelic, if I may.
Cowabunga, dude.
Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. TMNT.
Yep. When a Ninja Turtle jumps out of a spaceship and smacks you with a nunchuck.
Or they hurl one of the sewer things. What are those?
Manhole cover?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
One of those. That's a disc in the sky.
I had the turtle van that shot those little things out.
Yeah.
I don't know why they were red, though. That was kind of weird. But anyway, just a point of clarification. I'm sure Hynek would have added the fourth kind that you alluded to, which is an abduction. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, he didn't give a whole lot of credence to those stories. He thought those people were a little in the head.
Which will cover some of those stories.
Oh, Dad, those are the best stories.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, Hynek was really good, scientist and everything, and he was more or less like a friend to the study of ufology. But he wasn't perfect.
Oh, you remember that story I was telling you about with the naked lady aliens that showed up in that dude's room and he bit off a chunk of...
Yes.
So I found that and he took some evidence.
Perfect.
You know what it was?
What?
A hair around his genitals and a piece of nipple in his tummy. They induced vomiting, and by golly, there it was.
Did they study it?
Yeah.
What the hell was it?
They said it was from a humanoid that dates back to what's it called? Big foreheads.
Neanderthal?
Yeah, Neanderthals. They said the DNA relates to Neanderthals.
So do we.
That's what they said.
You're probably like 2% Neanderthal, and I'm probably like 7.
How dare you?
Just, like,
I'm closer related to the platypus.
Like, with my extra long fucking arms and shit and my body hair, I'm probably like 7 or 8. But
yeah, I can itch my ankle standing up straight.
Anywho, in 1973, Dr. Hynek founded the Center for UFO Studies, or CUFOS, which still exists today and advocates for the scientific study of UFO phenomenon. They have like this massive archive, all the stuff from NICAP when it went away. They took it all, so they've got it all archived. They have a website, which is almost a gold mine, but you can for sure tell that it's ran by like a bunch of old stuffy dudes, because they have on their website, they have like a QFOS merchandise thing, but it's a PDF form that you have to print out, fill out, and send in because apparently they haven't figured out that on the interwebs you can just put a shop website and go click, click, enter your card and gone. So yeah, it'd be nice, QFOS guys, if you're listening to me, find a young guy to update your website, but otherwise, I love what you're doing. Dr. Hynek continues studying UFOs. He wrote quite a few books, both on his own and with other, more high-level ufologists. He gave speeches and he gave lectures on the topic and all of that until he succumbed to a malignant brain tumor on April 27th, 1986, at the age of 75. So,
and right before that, his wife gave birth to their first son named Tom.
No. Fun fact, though.
Oh, geez.
One of their 5 children.
He got busy a lot.
Worked in the special effects department. And one of the movies he worked on was the movie Predator. And he actually won, I think, an Oscar for the special effects in that movie.
They weren't good.
So, fun fact, J. Allen Hynek's son did the Predator effects. That is a word nice. I can never say correctly. Predator. My tongue goes mushy around the predator part. Yeah, Predator. Yeah. Predator. Predator.
Roll that R.
But anyway, there is a just a little brief history. I figured with what's going on with the congressional hearings and the new public study of ufology, it would be kind of fun to look back at the history. And Dr. Hynek appears in a lot of the cases we're going to talk about. And in fact, I cut his name out of something we've already talked about. Dr. Hynek actually in 1955 went down to Kelly, Kentucky to study the Kelly goblins. But Mama Sutton told him, get the fuck out. We don't want to talk to you. So he didn't get real far. He wasn't like an important part of the story, but he did actually go down there to talk to them.
Did he talk to Barney or Betty?
I don't know. I'm not sure if he was part of that or not.
Because I know that got some wicked publicity.
It did, but under Blue Book, they didn't take a lot of stock in the abduction part of it, so yes, I couldn't say for sure one way or the other whether he was part of that or not.
Sounds like a stellar dude.
I think he really was. I mean, I think he, like I said, he wasn't perfect. There's a lot of stuff
besides me.
There was a lot of stuff he dismissed that I think was to the detriment of the study of ufology. But his heart was in the right place. And even as a skeptic, he was such a staunch believer in science that like he would never say we shouldn't study this. He would say we have to study it right.
Right.
And wherever the evidence led him, that's where he was going to go, which is why he wound up turning his mind around after a while. Because the evidence, namely from the Lonnie Zamora case, very much was so in his face that he could no longer deny it. So he turned his shit around.
I can feel the anticipation from our 40 fans.
Oh, both of them.
No, that's our Patreon.
Oh, right.
We got like 6 of them on this.
Right. So, yeah, there you go. There's a little history of Blue Book and J. Allen Hynek, just so that everybody's on the same page. If we bring up Project Blue Book or Hynek, we don't have to stop and explain what the fuck that is. We can just point you right back to this episode, and you'll be all educated just like we are.
Yes.
All right, Jacob, any further thoughts, sir?
Only questions that I am certain are going to be answered in the future.
Maybe?
Oh, definitely. Which I'm curious on when you're gonna hurry up and do Travis Walton.
Mm, it's on the list.
It's on the list along with 400 other
Oh
things.
God, there is such a list.
Yeah.
Such a fucking list. And if you would like to add to that list, then, if you have an episode idea, something you'd like to hear us cover,
Get a hold
reach
of me, not Ben. He doesn't need any more ideas.
reach out to us. The email address is paranaturalpodcast, all one word, at gmail.com. Or you can go to our website and hit the contact section. Our website is paranaturalpodcast, again, one word, .com. So,
or the Facebook group.
or yeah, hit us up on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. You can like it there. You can join the group. Yeah, there's lots of ways to get a hold of us.
Yeah. If that's not enough, here's my personal information and my address.
Beep. Anyway, yeah, there's lots of ways to get a hold of us. We would love to hear from you guys, whether it's an episode suggestion or if you want to tell us we're dumb. I don't care, whatever. Reach out. Feel free.
You tell us we're dumb, I'm finding you.
He doesn't have that kind of skills, people.
No, but I have a smart friend.
He has a very not specific set of skills.
I will find you. I will give you the most ravenous stink eye. I can't even talk.
Obviously,
very scared.
The English language is not part of his very particular set of skills.
But I can say some angry German shit. Or angry German Scheiße.
Everything in German sounds angry.
Yeah. Guten Tag. That means hello, everyone.
All right, then. Now, before we wrap this up completely.
Oh, God.
Just quick. I would like to leave everyone with a quote from Dr. Hynek that I feel both speaks to the true nature of the man and is actually truly great advice for anyone who looks at things with a mind towards scientific study. Quote, "As a scientist, I must be mindful of the lessons of the past. All too often it has happened that matters of great value to science were overlooked because the new phenomenon did not fit the accepted scientific outlook of the time." End quote.
I think a bug just crawled on your camera. Half of it blacked out for a second. And with that, I would like to leave you guys with a quote from his child that he doesn't know about, or rather his band. "Where are you? And I'm so sorry. I cannot sleep. I cannot dream tonight. I need somebody in all ways." Anyways, that's I Miss You by Blink-182.
And on that note, I think it's time to say thank you for listening and good night.
Bye.